As I say, we are joined in the studio by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and Piers Pottinger in the studio. Piers, you were sighing. Sometimes you had your head in your hands there. Nigel, you were just sort of smiling. I want to come to you in a minute. I'm not sure there was a huge amount of defending there, but Piers, what was most frustrating for you?
Well, again, I don't know whether it's wishful thinking or just delusional. They come up with these platitudes on everything, not just Yvette Cooper here. I must admit, being Home Secretary is a pretty thankless role, and I have some sympathy for her. And actually, of all the shadow cabinet, I think she's probably one of the better. And I was very disappointed in that speech because, again, she's saying we're going to do this, we're going to cut violence by 50%, we're going to do these things without any explanation as to how. If you're going to do these things, you can pass as many laws as you want, but you're not going to be able to implement them if you don't have people to execute these laws. And they talked in the election campaign about thousands of more police. They haven't mentioned that since. She didn't mention more police officers in her speech. You're going to need many more people to monitor these new laws and actually make sure they're enforced. And that, of course, is much more cost. So it's cost, pie in the sky. And when it comes to immigration, of course, she didn't really deal with it. Martin Hewitt, the new border czar, the first thing he did was say her plans for stopping the gangs won't work. So, I mean, that's a kick in the teeth. Yeah. And on top of that, of course, socialists love immigrants coming in because they can put them on social benefit and then they're beholden to the state. And that's what the socialists want. They want everyone beholden to the state.
Oh, that's a bit of a pessimistic conclusion,
yeah,
Nigel Nelson.
Not really quite true either. I don't think socialists like us do want that to happen. When you come
you don't mind that happening, though, do you? You don't mind the idea.
I do, but I think that immigration should be for the needs of the economy. So I'm not keen on putting numbers on it because I don't think that works. Piers talked about that these various things don't have any bill attached to them. Well, there's good reason for that. There's a budget coming up on October the 30th. All ministers are constrained now from saying anything that would actually include spending. So what Yvette Cooper did there, I think she's a class act. I think it was a good speech.
She had the audience in the palm of her hand.
Yes, I mean, she's good. She is very good. But what she did there was outline the various things they promised during the manifesto. There wasn't anything new there as such. But as I say, when it comes down to how things are going to be done, that really is for October the 30th, what the bill's going to be, how the bill will be paid. On the police thing, she did mention it, that she's talking about 13,000 more neighbourhood police and support officers to make sure you can clean up neighbourhoods. And the kind of message was she intends to take back our streets for the people who live on them.
Where is she going to get 13,000 new policemen from? Sorry, out of thin air? How long is it going to take? You can't do that overnight.
No, you can't.
It's
it won't be overnight.
No,
you're right. They've got to be recruited. It can't be an overnight thing. But the money was budgeted in there for the manifesto, which is why I'm saying nothing there that she announced was actually new. They were the manifesto commitments. The details going to have to wait till the budget.
Well, everything's going to wait to the budget. I mean, the budget is... nobody's given us any detail in this conference so far, and I'm sure Starmer will be giving us the usual stuff at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And the light at the end of the tunnel, the only light I can see, will be when the pubs close, because it'll be in daylight now if, again, Labour wants to ban people drinking. Again, instead of tackling the NHS,
by the way.
what they're trying to do is stop people eating, stop people drinking. I mean, soon...
Stop smoking.
Stop people doing anything.
True, but the idea they're going to change the licensing act...
But I mean, they're not dealing with the core problems properly. And don't forget, Nigel, in their election campaign, they kept saying everything was fully costed and fully funded. It clearly isn't.
I think for me as well, I keep looking for the ethos, the ideology behind this Labour government. And as the Home Secretary, Nigel, I wanted her to talk a little bit about some sort of, I don't know, call me old-fashioned personal responsibility. What I took from there is, if you're a criminal, we will lock you up, fine. If you can't feed your kids, Rachel Reeves yesterday, we will feed your kids for you. If the teenagers are misbehaving, we will provide a hub. I'm actually quite on board with that, the Sure Start hub for teenagers.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. But if you're poor, we'll look after you. If you want to live here, the state will look after you. Not at any point do these politicians from Labour talk ever about people taking responsibility for themselves and their actions and their health.
Well, I mean, I think they do.
What? Do you see what I mean? Like, think about it. They don't.
You just mentioned health there. I think that the change in NHS will do just that. And the idea, Wes Streeting's idea, is this will be a prevention service, not a sickness service. That then puts the responsibility on the individual to make sure they do prevent disease, that you do try and live healthily. So there will be that personal responsibility coming in.
But particularly when she's talking about crime there, there's very little I ever hear from this government about look after your own children, take care of your own teenagers, don't go out with a knife. It's always... There's just this very interesting balance happening between the state, it feels to me, getting their tentacles into every area of family and private and business life.
Absolutely. They want to interfere in every aspect of our lives and control it as much as possible, and get as many people on benefit living in fear, because that's the kind of people that vote for them. Because more intelligent people now realise what a disastrous thing it was to have voted Labour in the election. I mean, Starmer's rating is the lowest of any Prime Minister in such a short space of time. It's incredible how fast they've shown their true colours and how catastrophic this government has already become.
Yeah. And I think that's partly probably because they played with such a safe bat into the election. They just had to not be the Conservatives. But
they're talking about change. OK, they've changed government. But, well, I mean, change begins. What an extremely bizarre slogan to use. I mean, come on, let's get
this conference.
Everything's going to be better.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing's changing at the conference.
They're not going to have any money to spend. They're going to take most of that, but everything's going to be better.
Nothing. Socialists don't change. All they want to do is take our money.
We've got to move on, both of you, Nigel and Piers.
Well, welcome back to the Labour conference here in Liverpool. With me here at the GB News stand is the political editor at The Independent, David Maddox. David, you and I have been watching these conferences for a very long time. The Home Secretary's speech is always a key moment. To say that was thin gruel, I'm thinking of Oliver Twist. There was nothing in it.
I think the timing of it was interesting, that they stuck it in the morning before the Prime Minister, so everybody's kind of looking towards 2 o'clock when Starmer's getting up. There's surprisingly little in it, given us such huge issues, actually. She probably didn't want to talk about immigration in front of this audience. There's a lot of protesters outside and things who don't like her border force idea even, you know, in this party. But it's obviously a difficult area for her, and you know, it was much easier for her to really go back to the riots over the summer, where I think probably she did quite well.
But politically, they've got a problem, in my view, because we know Reform came second to Labour in nearly over 90 seats. And in some seats, they're just a few hundred votes behind. Reform will play immigration very strong and very hard. If Robert Jenrick wins the Tory leadership contest, and I think he will, he's going to make immigration a big, big key. If Labour aren't even going to concede that immigration is too high, that's going to be a political problem for them, and I think they'll pay a price at the ballot box.
I think so, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the local elections and the kind of assembly elections, like the Welsh Parliament and the Scottish Parliament. I think they're all underestimating Reform. I still think they're all underestimating, not just Labour, but the Conservatives. You know, if Reform really get a ground campaign together, that's what they were missing last time. They had the votes, but they didn't have a get-out the vote. You know, this could be a serious problem for them, and I think you're right. They do need to address these issues, because they're not just talking to the party faithful, they're talking to the country when they're doing this.
And I'm glad you made that point, because it felt to me, listening to Yvette Cooper, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the conference floor, where she was bound to get applause for the stuff about violence against women, obvious stuff, but still
very important.
Very important, but she's got a whole country to talk to.
She does, and her brief more than any, really. Well, you know, there's three of them: Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper and Starmer, they're the three who are really talking to the country at the moment. They're the key briefs in this government, and you just get the feeling that they're letting some things drift and not really kind of stamping their authority at all on these things.
One of the biggest cheers in her speech was when she talked about the terrible killings in Southport, and she wasn't having any truck with any idea that any of the people involved in the unrest were anything other than violent far-right thugs. And I think that is an oversimplification. That's my view.
It probably is to a certain degree, but they certainly were organised and pushed by the far right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. There may well have been useful idiots. There are probably plenty of useful idiots who got caught up in it. There may be some people who've been unfairly convicted because they just happened to have been caught up with it. But generally, this was a far-right problem. Now, you could say that the far-right issue is much rarer in this country than other issues, and that certain other protests were not dealt with in similar fashion. You know, we've seen anti-Semitism on the streets as well, which is has been frightening for a lot of people, particularly the Jewish community. So, you know, that it's something they need to. I think the government did well over the summer in acting swiftly and toughly on the riots, but they need to use that blueprint in other areas as well.
Let's quickly look ahead to the Prime Minister's speech, milestone in the history of the Labour Party, the first speech by a Prime Minister to a Labour Congress since 2009. Gordon Brown, when he made his speech, probably knew it would be his last one because Labour were heading to defeat. Of course they were. This is the start of a bright new beginning. Are we going to get sunlit uplands in the speech, or are we going to get more doom and gloom?
Well, I mean, certainly from what we've seen so far, he's going to try and give us some sunlit uplands. I mean, the thing was, yesterday, when Rachel Reeves tried to do that, the smile on her face seemed a bit forced for me. I mean, they've got to be more cheerful.
They do.
They've won a big election result. OK, they maybe didn't get as many votes as they wanted, but they've got a big majority. They've won the right to rule. They've got to be pleased about it. They've got to show that they're pleased about it and show what they actually want to do, other than just the kind of the misery of the first couple of months.
Because we've seen all these reports about confidence draining away in the business community, business confidence draining in the housing market. It's because relentlessly we're told it's going to get worse, and it's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to get even worse when the budget comes on October the 31st.
Which is why I think they've done a kind of sharp handbrake turn this week and are trying to now inject some optimism and positivism. Let's see if it works.
People aren't stupid. Last week it was all doom and gloom, and this week suddenly we're trying to sound a bit more upbeat because they've looked at the polling and shown that Keir Starmer's own polling rating, personal polling, have collapsed, and the Labour Party's polling rating has collapsed.
Well, it's true, and as you say, it's also affected business confidence. It's affecting general consumer confidence as well. Just people in the country, people don't want to be miserable all the time. I mean, it really struck me. Really, we've met with several ministers. None of them really are very happy at the moment, and they all seem to be very kind of worried about the arguments within the government, which are already happening. They're worried about obviously the kind of free gifts, freebies, scandals, and things like that. They haven't got off to a good start. It's not too late for them by any means. They've got best part of 5 years to sort this out. But, this is the big moment. This is going to kind of set the next couple of years, this speech, and he's going to get it right.
That's David Mannix, British editor of The Independent.